Building material marketing is changing and fast. From AI and M&A to proof and people, 2026 is really going to rewrite the rules for growth. So we're going to dig into the top 6 trends that are really changing the market and will be shifting everything we know. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's dig in.
So, as I'm sure many of you can feel, we're entering a year really defined by pressure. Pressure on labor, pressure on prices, pressure on costs, pressure on results. The good thing is, when it comes to pressure, it can really help us to create clarity. When we're under that pressure, it really forces us to make decisions and do things for our business that are really going to improve what we're doing in the market. And the businesses that are really going to see the best results in 2026, as we can kind of predict and as we can see, are really the ones who are going to turn that complexity into opportunity. Those who are really going to dig into data, technology, while also not losing those important trust cues and really focusing on what matters most for their audiences. And so to talk about all of this, we've put together what we believe are the 6 leading trends that are really going to be reshaping the market in 2026. And to help me do that, I am joined by Shannon Ballard, a leader in this area who really has worked side by side with building material marketers to help turn those insights into actionable strategies for our clients.
It's going to be an exciting time. We had so much fun putting this trend report together because we're always looking for ways to be helpful and help prepare our marketing leaders for the year to come.
Okay, so then let's jump in. The 6 trends that every marketer should have on their radar for this coming year. So let's dig into trend number 1. So first is AI won't sell building materials. People will. And I mean, if you believe the hype, sales teams would have been replaced by robots by now, but they haven't because trust is so fundamental to the process. But AI will be playing a huge role in sales today and moving forward.
Trust is the number one factor, and trust is where sales teams shine. AI can replace low-value, repetitive tasks. AI cannot replace the high-value, consultative selling, relationship-building opportunities for the sales team. But we also know in the building material industry, every marketer finds themselves balancing between sales enablement and true marketing. So let's talk a little bit about the marketing side of that. How can you help? So AI can support on inventory so that the sales team's better prepared for those discussions. AI can really help with the speccing process and making sure that it's accurate and that they're getting the quotes properly. AI can help marketers by giving them the ability to provide personalized content for the buyer journey that will help close those deals.
But it's really then about having that people-to-people interaction, right?
Yeah.
So all of that is helping to fuel, getting in the door, having those conversations, giving them those assets and that meat to be able to support what they're saying. But we really still see so much importance and so much value and so much of the industry also craving it, that people-to-people interaction, especially with high-value purchases, right? In the building materials industry, these are very important high price tag pieces, products, materials that, you need that trust behind.
We're seeing a lot of people going back to trade shows, back to in-person events, back to those in-person meetings, and I think that speaks a lot to the fact that people want to be able to see who they're working with and have that trust moment with them.
Especially for the initial, especially for those initial purchases. When you're working with a new brand, when you're working with a new business, you want to make sure that, yes, you have that face behind it, that credibility. I think the other thing, though, that, we all get caught in that automation cycle, too, that I think we should probably touch on, where, and we all get frustrated. We all get those automated replies, and we want to speak to a person, right? And so AI obviously helps a lot in that way to be able to answer a lot of those initial questions. but can cause some frustration, right? So we also have to be careful there.
There's two things that I think are really important to what you're saying. One, ensuring as a marketer that we are not contributing to AI slop. The generic, faceless, trustless content that doesn't really articulate or stand for the brand that you're representing. And then second of all, understanding where AI can help and where it can hinder the sales process. As you mentioned, being put into a call center loop feels, from an operations perspective, like a cost-effective way to manage call centers. It can be the make or break for a sales process that the marketing and sales team have been nurturing for many, many, many months, sometimes even years, and they can't get the answer they want and they walk away.
Yeah. And so I think if we were to kind of boil it down, trust is at the heart of this. And it's really about, as much as using AI and using AI in smart ways and really enabling the process, it's keeping that human element at heart.
Authenticity.
Okay, let's get into trend number 2. So the labor shortage is literally designing products of the future. And so what we mean by this is really the labor shortage is not going away. If anything, we're seeing more and more challenges. And so a lot of brands out there are really tackling this by creating new products that help to alleviate those challenges. And that's really what's getting spec'd and sold.
So never before have we seen so many building material brands launching products in the same year, and a lot in categories that you wouldn't expect innovation. So we're looking at more lightweight products, easier to install, also packaging up products and selling them as bundles so that it's easier for people to think about what they might need when they get to the job site. We're seeing tech-ready, automation-ready products so that it can be done by robots and other automatic installation. We're seeing a lot of products for prefab modular builders. And I think this is important for marketers because who you believe was your competition, products that you believed you were competing against may no longer be. The value propositions are changing. But I think it's also thinking about, a lot of times these products take a very long time to get developed, and then it's pushed over to the marketing team to rapidly and quickly launch them. And there's some really important things that marketers need to think about.
Absolutely. They need to think about, for one, who is their audience? Is it the same audience that they've had? Do they have the same challenges? And when they're thinking about that, are they maybe in a new category? We've talked about that before too.
Yeah.
Some of these brands, they come in thinking, well, we're just developing a new version of the same product we already have. When really, when you dig into it, it's a completely different way of building. It's a completely different way of approaching a project, which may be solving a problem, but also creates a whole new layer of, education and all of these areas that you have to help as a brand to bring your audience along. So it's really asking those hard questions and thinking about, are we growing our market? Are we getting outside of our market, outside of our category, and doing something completely different that begs for a completely new marketing approach?
It's really about risk and cost, that equation. What's the risk of changing? And a lot of times these products save steps, but there's a bigger investment. So how do you really effectively communicate that as part of the value proposition?
And so really what it boils down to is kind of complexity is out, simplicity is in. And for marketers, that really opens an opportunity when it comes to this innovation to work more closely with the product team, right? To focus on what's needed of the audiences, to kind of bring that collaboration and that insight, but also then to be able to help to bring that to market in the ways that are going to matter. Okay, so with that, let's dig into trend number 3. So trend number 3 is really all about M&A as the new industry growth engine. And so we've talked about pressure, we've talked about opportunity. This is really the intersection of both, where it's really reshaping what we're seeing in the building materials landscape.
So what we see as marketers is typically marketing is one of the last departments to find out that an acquisition is happening. And then all of a sudden that comes with a lot of pressure. So how do we talk about this acquisition? How do we integrate it into our portfolio? What happens if the products are competing? What happens if you've got a completely different brand? How do you bring them together? How do you talk about it? And so it can be very complicated for marketers to understand how to navigate this. And I know you have some tips for people.
Absolutely. So I wanted to dig into kind of three things to really think about here. So, if you are one of those brands who has been part of a merger or acquisition or really, needs to think about a bigger suite as part of your portfolio, first of all, it's about architecture, right? It's about figuring out the brands that you have and the areas that they need to play in, how they're unique, how they're the same, how you're going to appear in market, and how you're going to be experienced. With that is especially audience segmentation, right? It's about figuring out how each of those brands play, the products and solutions that they will be providing, and how that's uniquely different from the next. Because the last thing that we need to do is to be putting money against two competing brands in our own portfolio, right? That's really just kind of flushing our funds down the toilet when we could be spending them much better out there in the landscape. And so the last really then is about messaging, right? Because and we've seen this many times, if your internal team is confused, your external market has no idea what's going on, right? They're even more confused. If your internal team doesn't know how to talk about the different brands, doesn't know how to differentiate the different products, then you're going to get lost out there. And so making sure that you're focusing on really creating that distinctive message, looking at your differentiation points, looking at your unique value propositions, and understanding how those sit is fundamental when you're in that position.
And then building off that strategy to how you execute your digital media is really important. What keywords are you bidding on? From a regional perspective, is there any overlap? How do these brands show up through your website and your social? And making sure there's that clarity across the board.
And then if you're a brand kind of competing against some of these bigger now competitors, right? It's about really understanding where you play. Now they've got different solutions in their bucket, right? Now they've got different products to offer. Where are you leveling up against them, and how can you come stronger in that market and kind of provide that? Because smaller businesses and smaller brands have a lot of strengths as well, right? They can be a lot more agile. There can be a lot, faster with decision making and being able to provide solutions to their customers. So being able to lean into that and understand how you're going to come up against some of those now bigger players is also something that's very important when it comes to this trend.
So mergers and acquisitions is really the new growth lever for the building material space, and it's almost impossible to stay on top of everything that's happening in the competitive landscape all the time. And that was really the inspiration around us creating JK Pulse, which is our AI-enabled competitive intelligence tool, which allows us to monitor what's in market, what are your competitors doing, what's running in regards to search, are you investing enough in relation to other people? So this tool will really allow our clients to have a really good understanding of how to make the most of their investment, and also to understand from a messaging and positioning perspective how they can stand out and they can differentiate. And it's just one way that we are always looking for ways that we can help support our clients so that they can find a way to win.
All right, so with that, let's dig into trend number 4, which is the everywhere customer. The buyer journey is no longer linear. And so what does that mean for the future of marketing?
Well, it means that marketers have so much complexity. There's really two different things that marketers need to think about. It's the nice, neat, and tidy funnel that we like to think about. How do you get awareness? How do you nurture? And how do you convert right fit leads? And how do you create content for that? But then it's the everywhere customer. How do you account for generative search, retail media, websites, social? There's so many factors of where these people are bouncing in and out and on and off, and it's unpredictable, and they pogo stick all over the place. And so the art and the science of this is to really understand how to use data to understand where people are and what information they're looking for at what time, so that you can personalize that content to where they are in the journey.
Okay, so going back, let's talk about retail media.
Retail media, so many great opportunities with the big players. Even smaller independents are bringing out their own version of retail media. What's most important is to understand how your specific retail media strategy is integrating with your larger plan, but also knowing that not all retail media networks are created equal. And so you need to make decisions about what's performing and what's supporting your business, because nowadays it's impossible to show up at all of them.
Yeah, and you need to have that omni-channel approach to really make sure that no matter where they're coming in, they're experiencing that same brand presence across the board.
And the opportunity to connect with consumers on your own terms, and then use the retail media as that last mile to help convert right fit clients to your products.
And so you were also talking about at shelf. So let's
Yes.
talk about that, because I mean, in
Yes.
today's digital world, I don't know if we were expecting to talk about that, but that really has changed a lot.
Yes, since before COVID, there's not been a lot of attention to that in-shelf, in-store experience. And now I'm seeing a huge move back towards the focus on in-store. What are you looking, how's your product showing up at shelf? What sort of education and communication is available to help people understand what products go together? And also, does it look good? Does it stand out? Are you communicating your differentiators? Again, a lot of these companies have had product innovations over the last number of years, but haven't gone back to communicate that at shelf. So there's a whole focus on that as well.
Well, and at shelf is so interesting in this industry, especially because there is that touch and feel element, right? There is that seeing how durable it is, seeing how, is it going to withstand the rigors of the job? I can't see that online. There's a place for e-commerce, of course, but then, pairing that with that in-store experience, I think is still so important.
And understanding, are you in a low involvement category? Because if you are, that's where at shelf is a really important place for you to play.
So I just touched on e-commerce, which made me think, I think it would be amiss if we didn't dig in there a little bit further. So talk to me a bit about e-commerce.
So e-commerce and building materials can show up many different ways. It can be through the retail media. It can be through, we're seeing more and more on social e-commerce, and then also brands using their own e-commerce channels. The gap, though, is that people believe if you put your product out there, that people will purchase it. And that's where there's an opportunity to ensure that you're supporting each of those e-commerce channels with a more robust media strategy to help direct that buyer journey.
So bringing it all together, the path is no longer linear. What we need to do is really be looking at alignment of our discovery phase, our retail media, all of our other kind of purchase areas, and really getting to that kind of post-purchase support and making sure that it all fits together. Okay, so digging into trend number 5, proof over promises. And I mean, I can't believe we're still talking about this, but at the same time, I mean, more than any other industry, having solid proof in the products that people are purchasing is so important in building materials.
And that goes back to the trust factor, right? So we need to de-risk things for our customers. So product testing, using industry experts, looking at installation time and quantifying how much savings there are. And this all goes back to making sure that when you're going to launch a product, that you have enough time to be able to have all of those claims verified so that you can talk about them. Because that's really what will give marketers the meat that they need to be able to create marketing materials that will support the sales process.
Okay, so let's round this out. So our 6th and final trend is all about moving from digital tools and digital kind of advancement to data intelligence. Digital is not new, right?
No.
If you're not using these tools and you're not incorporating tools into your customer flow, you've missed the boat a bit, right? So we know that all of that is there. Digital adoption, thing of the past, it is natural secondhand today. But where a lot of brands are struggling is really figuring out how to take the data that all of their customers are creating and everything that they're getting from everything they're doing and using that to make decisions in their business.
Yeah, there's no lack of data. Everyone has more data than they know what to do with, but it's really understanding how to incorporate that data into a strategy that allows them to operationalize it. We talk a lot about this with our own philosophy around humanology, which is around the humanology flywheel. So It's less about being data driven and having data command every decision, and more about being data informed. What does the data telling us? What are the trends? How does it impact the insights that we have about our customers? Using that to develop a strategy and a test and learn approach, and then we execute and implement that. We get more data. We use that as a data informed strategy to continue to help us to learn and improve. And this cycle of learning and testing is really where we want people to get to, because data can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. And so it's taking the data, but then also understanding how does it really allow us to make decisions without being too concrete in the decisions that we're making.
So we did it, 6 trends, but really one common theme coming out across, which is complexity is going to create opportunity. And those brands that really lean into listening to the data, using their technology, really looking at the full spectrum of the journey, and especially putting trust at the forefront are going to be the ones to win. So thank you for joining me.
Cheers to a great year ahead.
And thanks for listening.